Today I want to talk about a difficult topic. I want to talk about something with you. Now, I know some of you may think, oh, this is a little far removed. It seems like it's a little late to the game or a little early to the game. Why didn't you wait to release this until there's actually a school shooting? Well, because I don't want to piggyback any channel success off of a school shooting. I want to talk about facts when people are actually thinking with more level heads, because this is everybody knows this is a very, very difficult topic to talk through. So I don't want to cause difficulty by piggybacking off of a horrible event. Okay? So, with that, I want to talk to you about in a few easy, simple ways that you guys are lied to. A few simple ways in which you are lied to about school shootings. Now, when you think of the word school shootings, you're thinking of instances like Uvalde and Nashville, or what's that place down there forever ago? Oh gosh, Parkland. You're thinking of very specific instances where quite a few students and teachers were killed, right? That's the picture that we have with school shootings. It's a very vivid and emotional picture that pops in your head when the word school and shooting are put together. So, with that, let's look at what is included in school shootings, because I think you're going to see there's some dishonesty at play here. All right? So, if you want to look at the source yourself, you can just search what you see here, GAO K-12 Education, Characteristics of School Shootings. I found this a while ago, and I wanted to make sure it was something easy to search, so I typed in exactly that, GAO K-12 Education, Characteristics of School Shootings, and it was the first result. So it's very easy to find. This is a congressional report, which means it's on a government page, easy to find. As a matter of fact, it's on gao.gov. Government page, very easy to find. All right, got that out of the way. Let's get down to the part that's actually showing the dishonesty here. Like I said, when you hear school shootings, that gives you a very vivid picture, right, of places like Nashville, Uvalde, and Parkland. Let's look at what they count in school shootings here, okay? So the biggest group, this is all separated, and look here. We have a total school shootings, 318. Okay, well, let's hold on to that for a moment. And I've got my calculator here on my phone, but we're gonna do some quick calculations and see how many actual school shootings, the way that you guys are thinking about it, actually happen. Okay? So first, the biggest category right here, we have dispute and grievance related, which is conflict or fighting, including gang-related violence on school grounds. Okay? Now, would you consider gang violence on school grounds considered to be a school shooting? Now, it depends on what happens here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, we're just going to say probably all of them happened for the purpose of, like, a big mass school shooting, like gangs invading schools and taking out students that may have been tied to another gang. Okay? Here's the part where things start to get really dishonest. Take a look at the second biggest category. 16%, 51 shootings, accidental. What is included in accidental? Accidental discharge of guns. Does that count as a school shooting? Does that fit into the same category as, let's say, Parkland or Uvalde or Nashville or Columbine or any of the others? Does it fit in the same category? No. As a matter of fact, very few people are injured during these accidentals. And as far as I know, none or very few are killed during this, okay? So we're talking a whole 51. So we're gonna plug in some numbers. Ready? Let me make sure that you guys can see it yourselves. Well, there we go. Okay. So we've got a total of 318. Got it? So 318. We're now going to subtract the 51 because, obviously, it seems like they're being a little dishonest with that. 318 school shootings, but these are accidental discharges. It could oftentimes be by, let's say, an officer that's on grounds trying to keep students safe. He accidentally bumped something the wrong way, forgot to turn his safety on, something like that. This is not a mass shooting. This is a gun goes off. Still a big deal, but not a school shooting, okay? That takes that big number down to 267. Seems like a pretty big deal still, right? Well, let's look at the next part where they're being dishonest. Right here, 34, suicide or attempted suicide. 11%, another 34. Does that count as a school shooting? Would it count as, let's say, aggravated assault if it's a suicide at home with a gun? Do we count it the same? No, we don't. Oh, and as a matter of fact, another video that I'm going to do another day. Japan's numbers show us that even when you increase gun restrictions, it doesn't mean that it decreases the number of suicides. But that's another video for another day. But 34 suicides or suicide attempts are included in the total school shootings of 318. Doesn't fit in the typical category of school shootings. All right? So let's subtract those as well. We're going to subtract 34. Gives us 233, okay? That's still very different. All right, so then we've got some other things. Let's look at this other, not clearly fit in one category, such as a shooting by a school resource officer in response to a threat. Ooh, interesting. Disparate incidents that did not clearly fit in one category, such as a shooting by a school resource officer in response to a threat. Ooh, the example that's picked there, why would that be picked as a school shooting number? Now, this may be a little bold, but I'm going to go ahead and just take those out entirely then, because in the example that's given, that is definitely dishonest, because if there's a threat, like let's say someone is making, like there's either a parent or just someone near the school is making a violent threat, or even, a high school student is about to pull a gun and shoot at someone else, and the school resource officer shoots in response. Does that fit in the same category? Nope. That takes the number down to 223. Still seems like a lot. Well, let's remember again. Excuse me, I just accidentally messed it up. So 223. Let's remember that they're using that big number, 318. They're using that to say, holy heck, there are so many school shootings that happen in the United States. Well, we just went through 3 categories where that may not entirely be the case. All right? And then there's another one here that's unknown target intent. Target or shooter's motivation is unknown. We're going to keep that, right? Going to keep that. 12, related to illegal activity, not including gang, but involves drug sales, robbery, or other illegal activities not including gang-related, because all that's put in the dispute or grievance. And targeted victim. Specific victim is targeted, but the relationship between the shooter and the victim is unknown, which is why it's not put in the dispute grievance. If we're talking about one victim versus a school shooting, still a big difference. I'm not going to remove them because I want to move on to the second big one, okay? I want to move on to the second category, which shows some big issues here. We're going to scroll down to whether they happened inside or outside the building, okay? So this is between the school years 2009, 2010 through 2018 through 2019, okay? Let's look at the ones that are outside the building, because when we hear about these school shootings on the news, we hear of things that happen inside the building, right? Parkland, inside the building. Uvalde, inside the building. Nashville, inside the building. Columbine, inside the building. All of these different school shootings, actual school shootings, happen within the walls of the school. Let's look at how many of them happened outside of the building and see what they are. So 43% of the 61%, over half of them happen outside the building. So Let's time out there for a moment, okay? Let's time out there for a moment. That means we're talking 192 happen outside the building. 125, all the ones that I've listed and all of the school shootings that you're thinking of, except for maybe one or two of you that like obsess over every school shooting that happens, you can probably think of at least one or two. But all the ones that most people think of happen inside the building. That takes that number down to 125. And look at which ones are inside there. We still have the accidentals. We still have the suicides. And we still have the dispute and grievance, which includes gang-related activity, which means other criminals outside of the school where something happens inside the school, which means there's a bigger problem than just guns in a school. But things that happen outside the building, that's a huge chunk. That's over half. Let's see what they have. Most of the dispute and grievance related happens outside of the building. The huge majority of that category happens outside of the building, 43%. We look here, domestic violence, which tends to be one or two victims. Not even saying that at this point that anybody's been hurt. You can look at the full report, yourself and dive deeper into it. But again, 9% of them. 9% are domestic. Now, look, that would lump in, if you're looking at 192, that's about, let's say, 16 shootings domestic outside the school grounds, which means they're probably not targeting the entire school, right? Look at what else is included over here. The suicide attempts are included outside the school building. The accidentals are outside the school building. Not all of them, because the majority of the accidentals happen inside the school buildings. All right? So this is what we were looking at as like our rough numbers of what would happen, what would be considered like school shootings, right? If we're only looking at the ones that get our blood boiling, the ones that go inside the school, they're purposely hunting down student after student after student after student, and teacher after teacher after teacher after teacher, let's look at the ones that fit in those categories. Let's look at the ones that take place inside the school walls, okay? So we're starting off with the number 125 shootings that happen inside the school walls. The accidental discharges, 31%. Okay? Times 0.39. It's 48. Technically 49, but we're going to say 48, okay? So we have 125 minus 48, 77. Okay? That took the number down drastically, didn't it? That brings the number down a huge amount. Oh, and the suicide and attempted suicide. Let's hold on to that number. I'm going to write it down here. If I can get my pen to write. Let's write down the 77. We're going to hold on to that for a minute. All right, so then we've got the 125. We're going to remove the suicide and attempted suicide because that does not fit in the same category as school shootings. So we're going to multiply by 0.17. That's another 21 shootings to remove. So we've got then the 77 if we're removing the accidental gun firings. And we're going to subtract the, 25? 52. 52. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you get deceived. Okay? This is how you get deceived. And look at this. School shootings by school location and kind of shooting, school years 2009 through 2010 through 2018 to 2019. We're talking how many school years? We're talking 9 school years. So then, let's take those number of shootings that happen inside the school walls, as I closed out my calculator, sorry. We had 52, right? Over 9 school years. Divided by 9. 6. 6. Now, I am not necessarily blaming them for all of this messaging. I am blaming them for some of it, including the accidental gunfires. Yes, I'm definitely blaming them for that, including the suicide attempts. Yes, I am blaming them for that. But again, they're just trying to provide some data to look over and to try to create something where we can figure out what to do about it. But what you need to understand is all of these people in the news, they don't care. These people in the news and these lawmakers who are pushing these anti-gun narratives, they don't care about the numbers. They don't care that when you break it down in reality and you look at, okay, well, if we're talking about things like Parkland, Uvalde, Nashville, and Columbine, if you break all of those down, and we're talking about those school shootings where shooters are loose in the school with multiple weapons and making their way through it, you're talking about 5, maybe 6, and that includes gang violence. That includes problems outside of someone purposely targeting a school. And this does not include how many are one victim versus how many are multiple victims. This doesn't even include if any victims occurred. These are just guns firing. And you know it's gun firing because of the accidentals. Everything is in the messaging. And this is why you can't just blindly trust anyone. This is why I tell you guys. And this is why I tell my youth group. If something sounds fishy, if something sounds suspicious, check it yourself. Ask questions. Do the research. Because you could be lied to like this. And I don't want you to be lied to like this. This is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous that if we're talking about the types of school shootings that get our bloods boiling and they're like, this is absolutely heartbreaking, this is terrible, how could someone be so evil? We're talking over 9 years, this entire number. And if we're breaking down just the ones that happen inside the school buildings, the ones that we remember, the ones that stick with us, the ones that have the most victims, we're talking about 6. We're talking about 6 a year. The messaging is everything. And you have to remember that. And that's why I wanted to wait until after the school shooting stuff had kind of died down. Because the stuff matters. The stuff really, really matters. Because people are going to lie to you about anything and everything. I saw a TikTok the other day, and I might post a link to this. This dude was talking about this congressman who was saying, you know why you don't hunt the deer with an AR-15? Because there'll be nothing left. It destroys the deer. And the dude was like, I don't want to make this a politics thing, but that's total BS. And so he showed a graph of the entry and exit wounds. And I've seen the reports about what it does to the inside of someone. A bullet wound is a bullet wound, okay? AR-15 rounds don't explode. Anyone who tells you that they explode is lying. But when you look at the entry and exit wounds, the AR-15 has a very small entry and exit wound. Now, the velocity's faster, sure. Bullet wound is a bullet wound. When you're talking about bullets, like I heard this stupid, I think it was after Uvalde, because the left was being stupid and trying to defend the Uvalde police officers, or like the Uvalde police chief, as saying like, hey, why didn't they get in there? Well, now we've got Nashville versus Uvalde. Again, here's another area where you were lied to. We've got Nashville versus Uvalde. Nashville, 14 minutes from the time that it happened to the time that the police stopped him. 14 minutes. How long did it take Uvalde? Do you remember? The big problem with Uvalde and Parkland is that the police chief didn't do anything. They stayed outside for way too long. I'm rewatching Grey's Anatomy with my wife, and we recently watched the hospital shooting episode, and I was watching it, and oh, it made my blood boil because I was watching them, and I was watching Dr. Weber get all upset because like the SWAT team was there, but they sent 5 guys in to go through the entire hospital. And during that time, a whole bunch more people died. I'm like, this is exactly why we get so upset at these police chiefs and these officers for not doing anything. Because in all of that time, they could have stopped something. They could have reduced the amount of death. But they didn't. They waited. They waited while more children and more teachers were dying. Whereas in Nashville, as tragic as it is, because it is tragic, daggum, those police officers did the right thing. They got in there quickly, they neutralized the threat, and they stopped more violence from happening. That's what you need to do, police officers. Good job, Nashville police. You make all these comparisons, you look at things for yourself, you investigate things, you check the stats, and you do more than just a simple Google search. You look at the numbers. Look, if you want to believe like whatever the popular thing is, then don't change anything. If you want to know what the truth is and you want to make decisions that actually matter and actually change things, you need to do the deeper research. What this shows us here is that reducing the amount of guns probably isn't going to do anything. There's a bigger problem going on, especially if the majority, and I haven't looked this deep into this yet myself, if the majority of the dispute and grievance, which is the largest category, is gang-related violence, well, there's a lot of areas, especially in the South, where that's not going to be the issue. But you can't be led astray by lies. The fact that the accidental shootings are included in this is just disgusting. You should be disgusted by it, and you should hate the guts of the people who include accidental shootings or don't mention that scroll back up to it, that the 318 shootings, and we can look in this, half of them are students and former students. We have a few unknowns because sometimes it happens outside the school, shooting at school grounds. Ooh. %12 of them have no relation to school. That's interesting. I'll have to look more at that too. But still, though, that 318 number that you hear tossed around, they won't tell you that that's stretched over 9 years. As a matter of fact, let's do one more numbers thing, okay? So 318 divided by 9, because they won't tell you that it's over a 9-year span. Well, if we take that 318 and we divide it over the 9 years, you're talking about 35 a year. And we know that includes the accidentals and the suicide attempts, which don't fit in that category. That's ridiculous. And it should make you upset, and it should make you want to hold your people accountable. And I want to believe the best in people. I really want to believe the best in people. But you got to step up and actually prove it. You got to stop voting for these dummies. You got to start putting armed officers in schools. You got to start taking care of the community better. There are things you can do to reduce it that don't involve taking guns away. And as we'll talk about in the future, taking guns away doesn't do anything about suicides. And it doesn't do anything about domestic violence either. But that's another thing for another day. For now, I want to thank you for tuning in. Be as respectful as you can be if you've watched to the end. I mean, usually, I know how this goes. You usually look for the main details, the jumping points, and very few people watch to the end. Actually, let me know if you watched to the end. And let me know if you looked at the resources and details yourself. I'm interested to know how many of my audience are actually willing to do that. But thank you guys for tuning in. It's a heavy topic for a heavy day. So let's play some games and goof off a little bit. I'll see y'all later.